The void between stars is patient. It waits for everything: empires, civilizations, hopes, and it waited for Zr'eth. She drifted through the obsidian dark, her crystalline exoskeleton fractured like shattered glass. The bioluminescent patterns that once pulsed with the rhythm of her people's songs now faded, dim and dying. Around her, the debris of the V colony tumbled in slow circles. Bent metal, frozen atmosphere canisters, and the cold, airless remnants of a home that no longer existed. The extinction fleet had come 3 cycles ago. They called themselves the Harvesters, a swarm of algorithmic perfection that consumed everything in their path. They did not conquer. They did not negotiate. They simply ended. The V were an ancient species, proud custodians of a 12,000-year civilization. In 40 hours, the Harvesters erased them from the living universe. Zr'eth was a child by her people's standards, only 430 rotations old. She should have had millennia ahead, centuries of learning, of contributing, of becoming. Instead, she clung to a salvaged escape pod, drifting in a sea of stars with a failing thermal core and oxygen reserves that would last perhaps another few solar hours. She was not afraid of death. The V understood that as a natural law, as inevitable as entropy itself. What Zr'eth feared was dying alone, unremarked, her final thoughts unwitnessed. In her culture, the greatest tragedy was not to cease existing, but to cease mattering. She had long since stopped sending distress signals. The nearest inhabited system was 40 light-years away. At sublight speed, her pod would reach it long after her atoms had dispersed into the vacuum. No one was coming for Zr'eth. She had accepted this truth as calmly as she accepted all truths. And then the human ship arrived. It was not a military vessel. That was her first shocking observation. Its hull was patched in a dozen places, the welds crude and visible even from a distance. The design seemed almost haphazard. Sections of plating hung from its frame at odd angles, as if assembled by someone learning the meaning of structure for the first time. Through her pod's dying sensors, Zr'eth read the ship's designation: Mercy's Wake, a human vessel. The implications crashed through her consciousness like a meteor strike. The Terran Accords were clear and, in Zr'eth's opinion, perfectly reasonable. Human vessels were to be avoided. Humans were not aggressive, the Council had assured them. Humans were not hostile, but humans were unpredictable, volatile, given to impulses that operated on logic systems incomprehensible to the ordered minds of the elder species. Humans felt too much. This was the consensus of xenopsychology. They acted on emotions that their own physiology clearly didn't require them to feel. A V could go months in meditation, perfectly comfortable in stillness and silence. Humans grew restless. They grew bored. They sang to themselves for no reason. They created art, vast, unnecessary explosions of color and sound, just to watch them exist. They wept when experiencing beauty. They laughed when experiencing pain. They were fundamentally irrational, and they were her only hope. The Mercy's Wake didn't follow proper salvage protocols. A standard approach would involve scanning, hailing, waiting for response. Instead, the human ship simply changed course, directly toward her pod. The engines burned with an efficiency that matched no registered human propulsion system. Yet the maneuver itself was utterly reckless: hard angles, rapid acceleration that would have torn apart any properly designed vessel. They're either coming to help or to end this quickly, Zr'eth thought, with the calm that came from having already said goodbye to existence. A docking clamp seized her pod with enough force to rattle her crystalline carapace. The sensation wasn't painful, precisely, but it was undeniably alien, invasive, the airlock pressurized, not with the gentle hiss of calibrated systems, but with a loud, aggressive whoosh. Alarms screamed through her pod. The humans weren't matching her atmosphere, they were forcing compatibility. The door sheared open, and Zr'eth saw a human for the first time in her awareness. He filled the airlock like violence given form, easily 7 feet tall, with broad shoulders that seemed to bend the very geometry of the space. Scarred, his left arm ended below the elbow in exposed servo motors and dark metal. His right eye was a cybernetic implant, a glowing amber orb that hummed with power. But it was his face that captured her attention most. His face, so clearly designed by nature to express emotion, showed no emotion at all. Just determination. Pure, crystalline, human determination. "I'm Marcus," he said, his voice a rumbling bass that made the recycled air vibrate. "You're alive. That's good. Can you move?" Zr'eth wanted to explain her situation in proper diplomatic terms. She wanted to be precise, to follow protocol. Instead, she found herself simply answering, "My legs are fractured. My thermal core is failing. I have approximately 4 hours of oxygen remaining." Marcus nodded once. Then he reached out. A gesture that should have been threatening, should have terrified a creature watching her potential murderer approach. But Zr'eth watched as he moved, as carefully as a being of such power could move, and she understood something critical. This human was choosing gentleness. Marcus carried her to the Mercy's Wake's medical bay the way one might carry spun glass. The journey took minutes that felt like hours, each step deliberate, each breath calculated to minimize movement. "I'm sorry about the rough docking," he said as he worked, his damaged hands moving with unexpected precision. "Precision alignment takes time. I didn't have time. You were dying." He was flooding her pod bay with an oxygen-rich mixture compatible with her system. He was wrapping her fractured legs in some kind of malleable compound that hardened as it set. He was working with the focused intensity of someone who understood that every second mattered, that a life, her life, hung in the balance of his actions. "How did you know I was here?" Zr'eth asked. "I didn't," Marcus said. "I was passing through. Caught a radiation signature from your emergency beacon. Most ships calculate that a solo survivor in a damaged pod isn't worth detouring for. Rescue effort costs more resources than salvage is worth. Cold mathematics." He finished adjusting her thermal core, replacing damaged components with spare parts scavenged from somewhere else on the ship. When he looked at her, his cybernetic eye whirred softly. "I'm human," he continued. "We're not good at cold mathematics. We're good at looking at something dying and deciding it matters too much to let it die." Over the next 3 solar cycles, Marcus kept her alive. Not through perfect protocols or precise scientific intervention, but through constant, stubborn attention. He sat with her through fever cycles, speaking to her even when she drifted in delirium. He brought her food when she wasn't hungry, not because it was medically optimal, but because eating together was a form of companionship. He told her stories, strange, violent, funny narratives about humans on Earth, about struggles against entropy and extinction that somehow always seemed to end with humans standing, bloodied but unbroken. "We're not complicated," Marcus said once, 3 days into her recovery. "We just don't know when to quit, even when quitting would be the logical choice." Zr'eth, her mind clearing as her body healed, began to understand something that contradicted everything her education had taught her. Humans weren't unpredictable because they were irrational. They were effective because of their irrationality. They did impossible things because they didn't fully believe in the concept of impossible. And they had chosen to save her. On the 4th cycle, Marcus received a distress beacon from another ship. A mining vessel, the records indicated. Automated systems had flagged an anomaly, explosive decompression, likely salvageable wreckage. What it wasn't saying was that the ship was V. Zr'eth realized this immediately. The design, the signature. A V mining colony ship, one that had escaped the harvesters. And it was in critical condition. "How many?" she asked Marcus, her voice still weak but clear. "Unknown. Could be thousands. Could be none. The ship might be empty. But we're close. 30 hours travel." Zr'eth felt something crystallize in her awareness. 30 hours. They were already past the point where it made mathematical sense to continue. Marcus's ship was jury-rigged, failing. Every hour pushed it closer to catastrophic breakdown. "We can't make it," she said quietly. "Not both of us. Not carrying the additional life support and power capacity a rescue would require." Marcus was silent for a long moment. Then he stood up and walked to the navigation console. He began inputting coordinates. "Marcus! My name is Marcus," he interrupted, not turning around. "I got that from the registry of the first human colony I ever belonged to. Marcus means dedicated to Mars. Fitting, because my whole life I've been dedicated to one principle. That one person, alone, means everything. That your life, Zr'eth, mattered enough to change my course. That their lives matter now." He turned to face her. "Your people created art for 12,000 years. They built things that survived stars turning old. They looked at the darkness and refused to accept it. I'm going to see if I can save them, because I'm human, and I'm not good at accepting darkness." He engaged the jump drive. What Marcus found at the coordinates was not one ship. It was seven V colony vessels, damaged but intact, their life support systems failing in a cascading collapse that would have killed every being aboard within hours. He brought them all online. The human arrived in a ship that was never designed to carry 600 lives. He had no proper medical facilities, no sophisticated equipment. He had himself and his absolute refusal to let any of them die. When Zr'eth finally saw the other V rescued, when she watched Marcus coordinate the emergency protocols with hands that trembled from exhaustion, when she saw him willingly open his own resources to creatures who, minutes before, were absolute strangers, she understood what the galaxy had never truly comprehended about humanity. Humans were not monsters. Not truly. They were something far stranger. Creatures who looked at suffering and felt compelled to stop it, even when stopping it cost them everything. They were beings who could value another's life more than their own comfort, more than logic, more than mathematics. They loved not because it was efficient. They loved because something inside their volatile, chaotic consciousness insisted on it. In the months that followed, as Zr'eth recovered fully, as the other V began to rebuild their colony aboard a massive station Marcus helped them construct, she worked alongside the humans. She attended their celebrations. She heard them sing strange, discordant, utterly beautiful melodies that served no purpose except to mark that they were alive and together. And Zr'eth, for the first time in her long existence, understood what her people had missed in all their centuries of philosophy. Purpose is not something you calculate. Purpose is something you choose. And the humans had chosen again and again to make it matter. She had expected a lonely death in the void. Instead, Zr'eth found something her species had forgotten how to value: witness. Someone who saw her suffering and said no. Someone who looked at impossible odds and chose to try anyway. And for the first time, the galaxy understood what it truly meant to be human. Not strength, not intelligence, not achievement, but the absolute, stubborn, irrational refusal to accept a world where anyone has to die alone. If the story moved you, if you felt something shift in your understanding of humanity's place among the stars, please subscribe for more human stories from the cosmos. Because the universe is listening, and one day it will speak.